A very good afternoon to everyone, and welcome again to Global Entrepreneurship Massive Open Online course. Today we have a guest speaker. With us is Mr. Naguib Muhammad Noor. And let me just give a short introduction about Naguib. He started his career as a structures engineer at Strand, UK, and has done wide-ranging technical work for major aerospace clients. Prior to returning to Malaysia to co-found Strand Aerospace Malaysia, he was the general manager for Strand UK. In 2010, Strand Aerospace Malaysia was selected to spearhead the development of the pure play engineering services industry for Malaysia as part of the Government Economic Transformation Program, ETP. Here, Naguib worked with the government and industry representative to develop a detailed roadmap to position Malaysia as a hub for high-value engineering services. In fulfilling his responsibility, Naguib sits on the steering committee of the Economic Transformation Program, ETP, and reports directly to the minister in charge. Strand Aerospace Malaysia is also a member of the Malaysian Defence Industry Council, MDIC. Strand Aerospace Malaysia has been continuously involved in developing human capital programs for engineers with the Ministry of Higher Education. He is one of the advisors, industry advisory panel members for a number of universities, including our university. Naguib holds a Bachelor of Engineering in Aerospace Engineering from UMIST and a Master's of Aerospace Vehicle Design from Cranfield. He's going to talk to us today about his journey, not only as an engineer, but also as an entrepreneur. Please join me in welcoming Naguib. Thank you.
So, hello, everyone. Can you all hear me? Okay? Excellent. Okay, so I've come with my slippers because I wanted this to be as informal as possible, right? Actually, I forgot my shoes. But, which means that I invite you to ask questions. We've got 2 hours, yeah? That's right. So when Mushtaq first approached me and said, can you talk a little bit about, entrepreneurship, which is, he set you guys a task of raising 10,000 ringgit, he said, each one of you, right? Well, that's fantastic, Then you pocketed it and ran off, right? When you need university, yeah. So, so there's a certain thinking that he wants me to share with you, yeah. How I got this far in the career that I've chosen and the business that I've grown, okay. So the first thing, I think there were a lot of big words in Mushtaq's introduction. We'll start with the first one, aerospace. Everybody understand what that means? Yeah? Yeah? Yeah, sort of. Okay, so, and in Malaysia, are you aware that there's an aerospace industry in Malaysia? No. Okay. Okay, you fly AirAsia? How many of you fly AirAsia? Right, everyone. Okay, so what aircraft is the AirAsia aircraft? Do you know what family of Airbus aircraft that is?
A320, A330s.
Yep, so the long haul for Asia X is the A330, and the A320 is the regional flights, okay? So the AirAsia A320, yeah, as with all A320s, if you look out the window on the wing and you see all the moving parts, right? The whole trailing edge is made in Malaysia. Were you aware of that?
No, we don't.
Okay, so that's quite significant because the trailing edge of the A320, if Malaysia stops production, the A320 today, which is at a rate of 42 aircraft a month production, that means more than 1 aircraft a day is being produced in Toulouse at the moment. If Malaysia stops production in Toulouse will stop. Okay, so that's how important Malaysia is to the aerospace supply chain, right? So just give you a bit of a frame that there is such a thing as a Malaysian aerospace industry, and by the same token, we work on almost every Airbus or Boeing aircraft you can think of. There is parts that are made in Malaysia, all right? So let's take a few steps back before I introduce the company and kind of come back to where you guys are today. You know? How old are you right now? You 20, 22, 21? Yeah? 21, 22? Okay, so you're trying to figure out what is it that you're going to do, right? That's what you're trying to figure out. What's the industry that you're going to be working in, okay? And you know how do you know what industry is it that you'll be going into? Okay, some of you all engineers?
Yes.
All right, all doing engineering degrees.
But you are speaking also to the online community, which
all right.
have people from all walks of life. Yeah. As well.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. Hello, internet. Right. So, right. So all engineers, at least in this room, okay. I remember when I was your age, I was thinking, okay, you know, the smartest guy in the engineering class is definitely going to be the top engineer. Yeah. Okay. Wrong. That guy became an accountant. Okay. Yeah, and he became, no, the next guy down became an investment banker. Right? In fact, I think really of my university graduating class, I would have said only maybe 20 or 30% of us actually stayed in engineering. Okay? The other thing is that when we were in engineering, we thought, okay, you know what? We're here because we love to design and build stuff. Right? Of that 30%, probably only 5% of them are actually designing and building stuff, I would have said. The rest of them are either maintaining stuff, or they're working Gantt charts, program management, right? Or some of them are even the financial side of engineering. Okay? So, just in the engineering field alone, I think in terms of what you perceive to be the industry that you're going into, I think that could vastly change. Now, that was the industry that I started in. That's when I started my journey, if you like. The industry that you guys are going into is completely different. All right? It changes almost every year, the way that the industry is itself manifesting, right? From, you know, the industry as Airbus or Boeing, but under this is basically a huge supply chain. And it's in that supply chain that you'll probably be working if you stayed within the engineering industry. Okay? So, just fast forward here to a little bit, then this company that I founded is an engineering services company. Do you know what engineering services company is? Somebody hazard guessed. Engineering services. Yeah, okay, go on then. Hazard guess. Engineering services industry.
You do servicing for parts.
Servicing for parts.
Maintenance.
Okay. And maintenance. Okay. Decent guess. Now, this is something which there's the whole reason I asked it, because this industry did not exist really 20-25 years ago, right? It is an evolution. It's an evolution of how people design and build and sell things today. Okay, it used to be that the original equipment manufacturer, which is Airbus in this case in the aerospace industry, would do everything under one roof. It would design the aircraft, it would build the aircraft, it will sell the aircraft, everything under one roof, right? Now, you guys know Dell, right? Does Dell do that? How does Dell make a computer? What on the Dell computer is actually made by Dell, do you think? Next to nothing, I would have thought, yeah? It's a supply chain. It's a supply chain. So even aircraft today is becoming like that, okay? So with every member of the supply chain, there is a specialization, okay? There's a specialization. So what it used to be was that first the OEM said, okay, I can't manufacture everything in-house, then the other manufacturing companies spun off from their manufacturers. So some of their manufacturing entities became companies in their own right, all right? Which meant that they could also build stuff for other companies, not just Airbus, okay? And then from those companies also, and from Airbus, they said, okay, you know what? Our core business is to build aircraft and sell them, right? And the real building of the aircraft, as far as Airbus is concerned, is the last part, which is in Toulouse, where the wings, which come from the UK, and the fuselage that comes from France, and the cockpit that comes from Germany, and the tail that comes from Spain, that last part of putting it together, that's what they do. That's their core competence, the integration. The rest of it, they really don't have to mess their hands with. right? So what's happened is that you now have companies which then specialize in these different things, okay, in manufacturing. And then they said, these companies said, you know what, because our skill is to build components for Airbus, actually to maintain a whole bunch of engineers to design this stuff is too expensive, right? It's too expensive. So you know what, engineering department, hire 80 of you. You guys go out and found your own company. We'll call you when we need you. So then this is where engineering services came from. Yeah, suddenly you had a company whose job was only to do design, but not for just one company. It could do it for any company, right? And all it was selling is knowledge. And so that's the industry that I'm in, okay? So now, come back to the point where you are today. If somebody had said to me, just I'm saying to you, what is the engineering services industry? I look just like you, blank, right now, yeah? Would you be planning for the engineering services industry now? Probably not, right? You couldn't conceive that that could be an industry that you could be working in. And guess what? How do you charge for your knowledge? How do you charge for knowledge? Somebody give me a guess. How do you charge for knowledge? Yeah, how would you charge for knowledge? How would you make money from selling knowledge?
It depends on how massive is the project and what's the labor which is required to do that project.
Okay. So, okay. Those are the dependencies, correct? But how do you charge? How are you going to make money? You guys are entrepreneurs, right? Answer the question of where the hell is my money going to come from? Where is it going to come from? How am I going to get paid for this?
I mean, as you're providing the knowledge, you're like the consultant, so you're charging them based on the consultant fee.
Okay. So how do you charge for a consultant fee? How do you charge a consultant fee? You just stand there and say, give him some advice and here's a bill for $100. So is it $100? Is it $1,000? How do you? Last mile, last mile. Now this is actually where you're at now, right? You got to realize that you are not really there. You're not landing the deal yet. Yeah? So if you're dreaming about being an engineer and all this is great. But narrowing it down to what are you going to do as a business is the key thing, right? So how are you going to charge for consulting? Okay, we'll give another guy, a lady in red there. There you go. Yeah, you were squirming, so you get picked.
Per hour.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. So you charge by your man hours or woman hours, as the case may be. Yeah.
She's the man.
She's all right. Compliment? Okay. Okay. So you charge by the man hour. And the quality and the standard of your consulting determines how much per man hour you're worth. Right? So lawyers are obviously overpaid, right? Because they charge a lot for their man hours. Yeah? Okay, so that's the industry. That's the industry that I am in. All right? And then from there, what are all the parameters that come into play so that I can charge these man hours to someone? Yeah? And that's the business that I have to build. Okay? So that's what this business is about, right? So the first thing is I was going to design aircraft parts, yeah? Now, if I just came out of university and then I said, you know what? I'm going to design aircraft parts. I'm going to put a website up, you know, I'm an aircraft part designer. How many clients do you think you're going to get? Zero.
Toys or
the toys one, yeah, maybe, yeah, maybe not, right? Yeah. So something is missing. Why can't you charge for your man hours yet, as an aircraft designer or as a bona fide designer? What's missing from you? There's credibility that's missing from you. How do you get credibility? Portfolio. How do you build a portfolio?
by doing projects.
By doing projects. What do you call that?
Experience.
That's right. It's experience. Okay? So that's really the basis of the business. Yep. You have to build up an experience. So if you're now dreaming of becoming someone in industry that's, you know, either working industry or your own guy, yeah, you cannot beat having experience. You must have experience. All right? Without experience, education takes you only so far. Right? For me, I would attribute only my mathematical skills to my education. Okay? And then the friends I made and the people I mixed with. That was the networking skills that I developed. Okay? But everything else I had to learn at work. So then Dr. Mushtaq was talking about what I do with the government. Okay? So in that capacity, I actually advise the ministers on this industry. Okay? I am today 38 years old. So I'm not so far away from you. Yeah? I'm probably less than 20 years away from you, right? Can't do the maths. Engineer. Okay? So not so far away from you, but I'm advising the government on parts of the aerospace industry, large parts of the aerospace industry. Okay? Because my company is the only company that is sitting. If you look at the design life cycle, right? When you're designing something, there's first a concept, right? There's an idea, and then you take it all the way to a prototype, and then the prototype, you validate that prototype, and then it becomes a product that is saleable, and then it goes onto the market, right? In the case of an aircraft or anything big like that, even a car, there's a service side of that industry as well. So that's the entire life cycle. Yeah. Because of what we do, we design the aircraft parts, so it's designed in Malaysia and manufactured in Europe. Wow, so it's the wrong way around. Huh? So that's what we do. But that's the world you're living in today. Eh? Just imagine that. Designed in Malaysia, but manufactured in Europe. Right? So things like that will happen. In your generation, things like that will happen all the time. All right? Because it will follow the capability, and the internet and connectivity is such that it allows for industry to spread out across the world. This is what's happening. Yeah. So by the same token, just as an anecdote, today I get CVs from France, from Germany, from the UK, from Spain to join my company, to work for Malaysian salary. So your competition is no more Malaysian. Your competition is the world. Right? That's another thing I think have to wake up to, right? Your competition is the world. All right? So by sitting at that side, where because we're designing, we're right at the concept, right through into the realization, I have visibility on things which a lot of the industry in Malaysia, which is to do with manufacturing or maintaining, doesn't have. So I can advise on this part. All right? So that credibility was built because I have 14 years experience, 13 years experience in this industry actually doing engineering work. So I have personally worked on every Airbus aircraft from the A300 to the A350. I've done something on every one of these aircraft. Okay? So that in itself comes out in what I say, right? And people take me seriously, including ministers lah. All right? So I don't know whether that's a plus or minus with you guys, but I think it's an important position to be in, right? So the credibility also, then you have to have something that differentiates you. Yeah? Because there are lots of people in the industry. So how do you differentiate yourself? Yeah? You can't all be selling keropok. One stall after another, right? There must be a differentiator. Right? In the technology industry, we have a certain character at my company, Strand Aerospace, which is a European type of character. So in Strand, we behave mostly like European engineers. Yep. It's a culture that we've built up from my experience and then the experience of the other guys who come into my company, and then we also put them in Europe as well. Right? So through that, when you have a client on the other side that's relying on you to help them solve a problem, if they cannot recognize you as a person, when they talk to you, right? Let's say you talk with a very strong accent, right? They can't quite understand you, okay? And then they're trying to give you instructions, and you know, and then you culturally, maybe, as soon as they say something, you go, yeah, I know. Okay, can. Right. You'll be surprised, this is the #1 complaint. You know how many French people have mimicked that to me? Actual French person say, yeah, they always say can. But it's never can, right? It just means I'm not sure, but I come back to you. But for the moment, I hope you're happy. right? That's what it is, yeah? Yeah? It's culture. It's culture. So what we differentiated ourselves is we taught our guys how to not be like that. How to be much more like the guys on the other side. So not only did we have to have a technical ability, you also had to have something above that. An actual personality. Because what am I selling? I'm like the biggest pimp, right? I have 160, I won't use the word, right? And I have to sell these guys, right? And they have to sell themselves by the hour. So the parallels are extremely good. Yeah, so don't go and get your experience in the brothels. That's not what I'm saying, right? So that's the industry that we're in, and this is the differentiator that I had to put in, right? In order for me to tackle the market that I'm targeting. So the other thing is, so you have to identify what's the market. Who are you trying to serve? Yeah, you can't say, oh, this thing is good for the whole world. Yeah, I think at your age, generally there tends to be a universal thought process, right? The whole world is your your market, right? But if you're selling stuff, you need to sell to someone first. Okay? So you need to identify who it is that you're selling to, and you need to make sure your product is targeted for this guy. Because until you've sold it, there's no credibility to the product. That's the thing. It can be the best thing ever, but like all, really great products, it's until they made the first sale before, then only it became a real product. Somebody has bought it. First question anybody will ask you, who is using it? Who else is using it? Right? Who else is using your services? That's what they ask me. So what I do is I show them this. Sorry, that one, right? So yeah, me shaking hands with some white people. Right? Right? These are what people have said about my company, right? It has been, you see what they say, it has been a pleasure to work with Strand Aerospace Malaysia, and I'm personally looking forward to keep working with Strand Aerospace Malaysia on this and on other projects, right? Sam performed always as a partner and not as a simple supplier. You see the things that they highlight and they appreciate? Yeah, it's almost as if even if you didn't do a great technical job, doesn't matter, I like you. Right? Almost. Well, obviously you have to, but you can't deliver one without the other, yeah? You can't be just fantastic technically and then expect to sell. No. There's a relationship that you need to build, okay? So these are all skills that, this is why I say, those are the things that you have to learn when you're actually in industry, okay? When you're actually in industry, okay? So let me show you my team. All right. Okay, ignore the old people on the left and the right. Okay, they are, well, Rahul's an experienced guy. This is my chairman, but this is the real team here. Yeah. Oh, thanks. There you go, initiative. There you go. Right. So I think I'm the oldest there. The rest of the guys are all. This is the leadership team. So we're all about 33 to 38 years old, roughly. Okay, and then under this is all the other more junior engineers. So there's a hierarchy of engineers. Okay, in the world today, what I've noticed, there's a lot of companies that they look like this. Yeah, they look like this. They don't look like, there's all like that guy. He doesn't show up most of the time. He's just helping us with the government side of things, right? But nowadays, you see a lot of companies, and then this young guy. That's why every time I turn up, people are disappointed. They feel like, hey, where's the boss? One time, okay, anecdote, I was invited to the British High Commission. The Red Arrows were performing at the Subang Air Base, right? I got a VIP pass, because I'm an industry player. Okay, great, So I rocked up in my car, okay? So I was driving, because I don't use a driver, because it pisses me off to have a driver, right? So I put this thing, the sign on the front of the car, okay? Then I drove to the gates, Royal Malaysian Air Force. So you got the guard, the soldier at the front there, as you approach there. So I stopped, berhenti untuk pemeriksaan. Yeah?
What's that in English? Sorry.
Oh, right, that's in English. Okay, stop for inspection. Yeah. Or stop or I'll shoot. Right? More likely. Okay. So I stopped there, right? And the guy looked at me and he said, "Is the boss gone already?" Yeah, so anecdote, yeah. So he thought it was the driver. So yeah, so I think today a lot of companies that I'm dealing with, this is what they look like. And what I'm seeing going forward, there's a lot more need for energy in companies, right? There's a lot of youth that's needed to drive things. Okay, if you look at AirAsia X, for example, Azran Osman Rani, I think he's probably just touched 40. But if you look at him, he looks like he's 30-something, right? Time.com, Afzal Rahim. Afzal Rahim is 2 years younger than me, the CEO of Time.com. And I used to play squash with Afzal when I was a kid, you know. And he's a very interesting character, you know, because when we were kids, you know, he was the screwball. He was the one that always turned up late, was always big, right? So he meander along, you know, and he'll be laughing, and you hear him laughing, and we'll run him around the court, you know, and then we'll go and have a drink, you know, and he was always joking, right? So he was always a decent performer at school, but it was actually his character in the end of the day, right, that made him successful, right? The other thing that we have to do as people in industry who are leading entrepreneurial exploits like this, because nobody has really done this in Malaysia. I was chosen to lead in this industry because there is nobody else with the experience that I have that has built up enough of a track record so that the government can support to grow even further, right? When they scoured the whole country, they found only myself and one other company, another guy who came back from Japan. Okay, so with this sort of industry, then what is required is sometimes for you to take risks which are uncalculated. Yeah, most of your risks are obviously calculated. Yeah, but there will be some things which you just don't know. You just don't know, right? But you must always have a plan. I think that's very important. You must always have a plan, right? I was talking to my most senior engineer, Raven. Yeah, Raven actually went to university with me. Yeah, so we were next door in our dorms, and he was always the brilliant engineer. He was the guy who got first class honors. I guess who's he working for? The guy who got second class, right? So that's always going to be the case. I'm kidding. So so I was sitting with Raven. Raven's a brilliant technical mind, right? Brilliant technical mind, you know. But the challenge that we had at Strand was that we were trying to do, I mean, this is our clients, yeah? This is the kind of work that we do. Okay? This is just sample of the work that we've done. You can see that that's all the aircraft, the flagship aircraft that you can think of today, yeah? In the Airbus range. We don't do Boeing yet, we just started, right? The A350, for example, is the latest Airbus aircraft. It is made out of 50% composites, carbon fiber, right? It's got composites in places where it never had before, like the main spars of the wing, the main ribs, the main skins, right? These are technological advances never before had in a civil aircraft, okay? So with this kind of thing, right, if we want to keep doing this, we have to keep expanding the business. Why? One problem that companies had when we were small, when we were only 15 men or something like that, right? When we were only 15 men, they really liked this, right? Our clients really like, oh, we like that 15 bunch of guys, yeah? But I got work for 40 people. So your product doesn't fit. It fits from a capability standpoint, right? Your skills are right. I really like your people, but you're too small. You're too small. So then I sat down and I started to think, right? This is in 2008. I started to think, right? How am I going to go from 15 people to something bigger? Yeah. So this is when I start. Nobody is going to fund a company like this. Yeah. If you go to a bank and say I'm doing aerospace industry, people are going to go, what? Right? I deal in bricks and mortar, right? If it's not bricks and mortar, I don't want to fund. It's a challenge. Yeah? This is the industry you're going into, right? If you suddenly say, oh, I want to get funding from a bank, I got a brilliant product. Good luck, right? It's not so easy in Malaysia to get that kind of funding, right? That's why usually you have to go for angel funding or something like that, okay? So I had to figure out how to do it. So then that's when we started thinking. I said, look, in aerospace, in any country, it has to be part of a national agenda. It always has to be. Boeing is part of the American technology national agenda. Airbus is part of the European strategy, right? Sukhoi is part of the Russian strategy. Today, I said, Strand is only part of Malaysia, of our own strategy. We're not part of the country's strategy. So I needed to put us inside the country's strategy. Then only we get the right support, right? So then Raven said to me, he said, oh, okay, very good. Yeah, I think that will work. Now how the hell are you going to do that? Right? Okay? So I thought about it, right? And then I drew out a plan, you know. I drew out a plan. And I can tell you 90% of that plan, it all made sense, yeah? It all made sense. It's like your university thesis, right? It all made sense, right? So long as you don't have to build it. Well, here you have to build it, right? You have to build it and prove it. Okay. My university much easier. I just had to write it and it was fine. Right. So I drew out this plan, and then Raven looked at it again and said, "Oh, that's fantastic, Najib, but you know, looks like a fairy tale book, right?" I said, "How are you going to do it?" I said, "I don't know, you know, but we got to start. We got to start because we cannot stay here forever." At 15 men, after 2 or 3 more years, my team would get bored. They would say, "You know what? 15 men's been good, but now I got so many skills. Everybody wants me, right? So they're going to go. And I, as an entrepreneur, know my company is going to disappear just like that. All they have to do is walk out the door and I have no more company, right? So I needed to create a future. Okay. Now there's 2 things to this, yeah? One is you have to get other people to believe in what you're doing. Because that's the only way you're going to get people to support you. Right? Do you agree with that? Yeah? If people don't believe you, they're not going to come. Right? And number 2 is you got to get your own people to believe that you're going to be able to do this. This is the defining trait I found of most CEOs that I've met. They are people who inspire a direction. And they inspire this direction not by dictating, usually. The best ones that I've seen, they don't dictate. Yeah? They inspire people by being part of them, but showing them what else they could achieve. But always, as an entrepreneur in your back pocket, you need to have your trump card. You must always be able to show something that nobody else can show. Right? Otherwise, people are like, oh, okay, you know what? I know what this is already. 1 year, 2 years, okay, enough. I'm moving on. Yeah? So you need to have that. You need to have that drive and what that takes, yeah, I found is almost an irrational belief in yourself. It's almost irrational. It's almost irrational. Why I say almost irrational? Because it's irrational from the point of view of other people will look at you, your friends may look at you and say, I know you lah, you know, we lepak at the coffee shop all the time, you know, what the hell lah, you know, don't talk lah, you know, right? Right? Yeah? Yeah? Okay, now the number of people have told me that all my life, when I started my aerospace degree, I remember a friend of my friend's mother visited us in the UK, and she asked me and said, Najib, what are you doing? I said, I'm doing aerospace engineering, auntie. She said, oh my God, where are you going to work? You know, what are you going to do with your life? It's as if I said, you know, I was going to be a street musician or something, you know. So, and people were telling me that all my life. But somehow, from a young age, I always thought, no, you know, I enjoy doing this, and I believe that there is a reason to do this, right? There's something bigger than myself here. So I just went for it. I just kept going for it, and this whole, you know, cliche of opportunity meets preparation, that's all there is really to it, right? Opportunity meets preparation, okay? Now, there's also failure in all of that. And I think that's the scariest part. That's the scariest part because you're always thinking of how you're going to deal when you come to it, right? And sometimes all you have is your irrational belief in yourself, right? Sometimes that's all you have, right? Sometimes that's all you have. But you must make sure that, you know, like I was questioning you just now, your foundation is there, right? You don't set up an irrational belief in yourself in something that's got absolutely no basis at all. You know, if you got no market that you are targeting, you got no product that's worth talking about, you got no track record, no experience, and then you suddenly say, I'm going to create the biggest company in the world, forget it lah, you know, right? It's not going to happen, right? So if you have that, somehow you will come to points where you will question yourself, right? You'll question, can this really be done? Yeah. And actually the only way to find out, is to do it. That's the hardest part, right? Only way to find out is to just do it. So when the government came to me and said, okay, you know what, you talk a lot, right? So I had to talk, lobby, tell, you know, I was in the Economic Transformation Program laboratories. I think that's got good experience to share with you. I'm an engineer, okay? So I've been doing calculations, yeah? By that time, about 7-8 years already of experience, you know? I handle spreadsheets with thousands of numbers. That's what I do, right? So people, you know, the client will say, here's a hinge, Naguib. Wow, hinge, exciting, right? Not even aircraft, huh? You just do a hinge, right? Okay? And I can spend 6 months analyzing that thing to produce the report that Airbus wants. Okay? That's what I am in terms of my training, okay? So when I went into this laboratory, so what the laboratory, it looks like this. Yeah, it's a room. There are about 50 people. Most of them are CEOs or CTOs or CFOs of companies, right? Idris Jalla, the Minister, Prime Minister's department, you know, he basically locked us all in the room. There were 12 rooms, each one talking about one economic area, right? I was looking at business services, right? Business services. So I was locked in there with the CTO of Oracle, Microsoft, IBM, right? So all these guys for 2 months. I was probably the youngest one there, or one of the youngest ones there, right? All these people have run large companies, okay? All of them have run large companies, okay? Facilitating the lab was Accenture, a consultancy company, right? So here's this engineer that's been doing hinges, right? Have a 14-man business, right? Knows how to sell what he sells, okay? But needs to find a way out, because without it, his business is gone. So I went into this lab. I said, okay, this is intimidating. Yeah, there's a lot of people here that know a lot more than I do. Okay, but then irrational belief comes in, right? You know, but then I said, but I'm pretty special as well. You know, I just haven't figured out how yet in this room. Okay. So we got in that room and the whole process started, right? For 2 months, we literally every day from 9 to 5, we had to be in that room, brainstorm ideas. So there were like 50 plus ideas that came out, you know, of service industries that Malaysia can go into to propel the economy. Yeah. I said, okay, you know what? First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to write about what I know, which is the aerospace industry and the services industry and the maintenance industry. I said, okay, I'll write those 2 things, okay? So I started writing these things, and then a few guys joined me to write these things. At the end of the laboratories, yeah, out of 50 odd ideas, only 6 were selected. Right? Out of those 6, 2 were the ones that I wrote. And one of the things that I had focused on, and I noticed with some of the other things that they wrote, they didn't land, a lot of them didn't really, they've come through a corporate ladder, yeah? I think you have to appreciate coming through a corporate ladder and being an entrepreneur, it's quite different, you know. Corporate ladder is a pathway, right? Yeah. You do, somebody recognizes you, you get promoted. You do, kiss the right ass, you get promoted, right? I'm kidding, just about, right? Depends on what companies, right? So that's corporate ladder. Right? So quite a lot of them did not have entrepreneur sort of experience, you know, how to ground the business in a sense. So I just said, you know what, I'll just write about this stuff, but I'll write it around what I know and how I know how to build this thing, okay? So when I had Accenture, which are what, management consultants, okay? Wow, they know every business under the sun, yeah? Yeah, not, right? Sorry, I'm a bit critical of consultants, but you know, they're very useful people. They know how to write great PowerPoints. Oh, damn it. What's happened there? Okay. Yeah. Okay, so they were going to take my business plan apart, right? Every single one of this. They put this plan, you know, how you know that's going to happen? How you know that's going to happen? What were your numbers here? How did you justify that, right? But because I had my basic training in engineering, one thing I was very thorough. I was very thorough, right? So any number, because engineer, right, you can't just have a number from nowhere, right? Well, at least if you do, you better have a reason for it, right? It's called an assumption. Assumptions are okay, right? So because of that, what I learned was two things. I learned a lot from them, I have to say. I did learn a lot from them. But it was very difficult for them to then cut down these numbers. You know, but wherever they found a hole, right, then I learned, okay, that's another part that I need to account for, right? So I went back to the drawing board and wrote that part up. So by the end of it, mine was the only one really out of the 50, well, out of 6, right, of 50, that actually was very robust. End of the day, what we were trying to write was the future of the country. So and this is where consultants usually have a problem. Yeah? Because consultants, in terms of management consultants, usually have to refer to something that happened before. Right? It's a precedent. They work on precedents. Yeah? So, and because you pay them to make sure they're right, okay? So they have to work on a precedent. You know, it's just part of the job in a sense, right? They have to say, okay, so this guy has done this before, this okay? Therefore, this business case is sound, right? But the guy who can take it to the place where nobody has taken it before is the entrepreneur. It's rare that you will find a consultant type doing an entrepreneurial role, because there are so many things when you actually want to get it done that you don't know, that you just have to go in there and look stupid, right? That they will never do. A lot of them will never do, you know? So that's why I find most entrepreneurs are very very grounded people in a sense, right? Yeah, you know, we can laugh at ourselves, you know, we tend to be very approachable, yeah, because we want to learn from anybody. Yeah, I think that's another skill that you should have. You should always learn from whoever it is, you know, that's around you. You can learn something from anyone, to be honest, from anyone, absolute anyone. But in order to learn something from someone, and I've learned from everything from, you know, students, right, up to CEOs of large companies like Airbus. You know, I have to be able to hold a conversation with everyone, from minister to CEO of a large company to students and so on and so forth. Why? Because in there is knowledge that I will need. I think going forward in the industries that you guys are going to be going into, the evolution of the industry is so fast now. You think about it, Facebook, right? Somebody was saying that day Facebook did, something else is coming already, right? I don't know where you guys are using it. There's some new app apparently that more people are using now, beginning to use now, youngsters are using now, not Facebook. I was thinking, wow, you know, right?
It's called open learning.
Is it? Really? That's yours, isn't it? That's your $1 billion idea. So it's something that the industry is evolving so much. You know, like I told you, the engineering services industry did not even exist before. It didn't even exist before, right? So what is going to exist in your future is something that I cannot say. You know, I can't say what skill is going to be needed to excel in the fields that you guys are going to go into, right? And what fields will be there. The industries there, even new industries that have never been there before, right? So I think, therefore, you should go into the future with an open mind, right? But what's very important is you must ground yourself in a skill, in something that you know. That's why that whole story about the labs, yeah? If I didn't have 8 years of solid just doing calculations, my brain would not be able to absorb all that was coming, because there's no way to process that information. Yeah. Now that's something quite, okay, I'm not sure if that's easy to explain. Yeah. If you have just a purely academic sort of background, right, then you're set up to develop things in an academic sort of way, right? But industrial sort of way is slightly different, because like I say, there are things that are unknown. Yeah, there are things that are completely unknown and can affect you in things which are not, in ways which are not to do with technical aspects of things. It'll affect you from a business standpoint or some other thing, right? Sometimes even personal, right? So you have to be able to adapt to those kind of scenarios, right? So I think, sorry, I lost my train of thought there. The light went into my eyes. Right, so with grounding yourself in something technical like engineering, right, actually helps you maneuver a lot of scenarios. Because the problem with really complicated scenarios is if you approach it trying to take on the whole thing, you're going to be dead at square one. You'll never solve it, right? And I think this is where you got to appreciate, if you are in a Malaysian sort of environment, yeah, generally when you come through school, you are conditioned generally to be a rote learner. Generally, a rote learner. Yeah? So a rote learner is someone who learns by memorizing. Generally. Yeah? So they've not actually learned to learn. They've learned how to memorize. And then how to regurgitate. Yeah? So with that sort of thing, there's the problem you find when we have, because I take on a lot of Malaysian engineers, and something like 10 a month, something like that, right? 10 a month, is that they're unable to structure their thought process, right? So when I ask them a question that they don't know the answer to, they can only come back most of the time with, what formula do I use? Or some question like that, right? They don't ask me, where should I start? Right? Or they don't ask or guess at a starting point. All right, can I start here? Right? And then build up to it. Because when you have a very complex problem, you're going to have to take it a bit at a time. And what always happens in engineering is, as you go through it, you notice that all the other parts which you thought were, oh, this big problem, that big problem, right? It starts to what they call fall out. Because you solve the key issues, everything else drops out. Then you're left with just, there you go, right? And the thing about engineering is there's not just one path. There can be several paths to a solution, to a requirement. Because you're engineering to a requirement, right? To something which you need to build, to serve a purpose for someone that you want to sell this thing to, right? So there are many routes to engineering this. So with that sort of thinking, yeah, you can actually handle not just engineering problems. You can handle other problems as well. You handle business problems in the same way. So when a big problem comes, business problem, like, you know, like I was stuck, 15 people, how do I become, because the people I'm working with say, if you're not at least 100 people, difficult to talk to you. Difficult, right? You can do a bit lah whenever I have work, but if you're not at least 100 people, I can't talk to you. So, now, is that an engineering problem or not? Think about it. But you can engineer your way through that problem. That's the point. You can actually engineer your way through that problem, right? And with every mistake, you correct, okay? And it's not just a theory, right? Without the experience, you're not actually an engineer. Yeah, without the experience, you've not actually made things real, and you've not made enough things real for enough people to say that you are now someone who solves real world problems. It's only when you go through those experiences that you've really find, you know, what makes sense, what is real, what is not real. And so when I advise like ministers on industrial policy, for example, I only know one engineering, which is this, right? Design engineering. I don't know manufacturing engineering, you know. I don't know maintenance engineering, but I can look at each one of these industries and I can dissect it and say, okay, you know, What's the driver behind it? Or how do they make money? First question I ask. How do they make money? Oh, it's from here. What is their margin? Oh, this, right? Okay, if that's the margin, therefore, these are the kind of overheads they will cost, or these are the kind of people that they hire, right? These are the kind of skill sets that are required. And before long, I've dissected the whole business. And I know, oh, bloody hell, this is a tough business, or not. Yeah? You at your age now, most of the time, if I bring you into an aircraft hangar where they're doing maintenance or manufacturing, right? You know, okay, somebody guess roughly what is the margin in a machining business. Do you know what machining business is? Do you know what machining business is? Do you know what machining business is? No? Machining business? Anyone? Do you know what machining is? Bloody hell, engineers. Machining? Machining? Manufacturing of parts, okay. So but what's the process of machining? What is it that you do? That's right, that's right. Right?
Using all the CNC and lathe machine and all those stuff.
That's right, that's right. So you take a piece of metal, or whatever it is, you stick it in the machine goes, right? And then comes out, okay? And then you see big factories, this stuff just comes out. Yeah? What do you think the profit margin is on these things? Let's say I was machining a part for an aircraft engine. Right? What do you think? Do you know what the margin is, right? Do you guys know what margin is? Yes? Okay, what's the margin? Yellow shirt. What's the HP?
Margin, I guess
Yep.
it's something like the maximum profit from the, I mean the difference between the base and the maximum.
What's the base?
No, let's say the production cost was the basic cost.
Yeah.
And the margin is how high is margin is how high profit can I bring from that.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. So it's the price versus the cost, right? So margin, right? In machining, it's typically 3 to 8%. 8% is the maximum, usually, that I've seen. Most of the time, you come in at about 5, 6%. 5, 6%. That's all, right? So you see this huge factory, yeah? Actually, the margin is only that much. It's not 20% or something like that, right? It's not huge, yeah? So that means if that factory stops producing for any reason for a few hours, it's losing money already. You can eat into your margin just like that. If you have scrap parts, i.e. the machine went and it's not right, you eat into 3 probably parts after that in terms of the margin. Yeah? So it's a tough business. Very tough business. It's about consistent quality, consistently producing the stuff and doing it as fast as possible, utilizing the machine as little as possible. Right? So making the process most efficient. So that actually, then you find out, oh, the business is about process efficiency. Yeah? It's not actually about machining. It's about how efficient can you make your manufacturing process, because your margin is so thin. Right? So in fact, the work that you have to do where it's skill, like a hand job with composites and stuff, then the margins are bigger. Right? So these are the things, right? So I found myself doing it automatically. I was recently in, I'm in Europe almost every month. Right? So I'm either in France, Germany, or in the UK because I have to see my clients. And now I was in an aircraft hangar handling business jets. Okay, cool, right? Go there. So fancy aircraft hangar, you're thinking, shit, you know, this is great, right? And then you see all this, oops, sorry. You see all these fancy Arab sheikhs business jet, you know, with the gold interior, right? And I saw one, not there, an A380. No, I saw 3 A380s that were VIP aircraft. So they had movie theater. He had, you know, it's only 5 people in the A380. Him, his wife, and his 3 kids. Right? Right. So when I saw, okay, business jet, no, I said, oh, this is cool, right? And automatically, as I was walking the shop floor, I started asking him some instinctive questions. You know, I said, what's your electricity overhead? Yeah, what's the rental per square foot? Yeah, what's your man hourly rate? Okay, and then when I asked those questions, I said it looks like a quarter of your floor is empty, right? So based on that, I done the calculation and said, oh, your margins are pretty thin, huh? They said, yeah, bit tight, right? So we have to work like hell, you know. And he said, you know what the problem is? People who own business jets are like people who own Porsches and people who own BMWs. Yeah, they decide to service the car. Alamak, ting 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 ting, must service already. Call, you know. I got space, can oh cannot okay, good, you know. So your client only comes 2 weeks before is due. So you don't know who your client is more than 6 weeks ahead. That means in 6 weeks, you could have a completely empty hangar. Right? So then you realize, oh man, you know, this guy is working like a dog, right? To feel, and when I asked him the question, he said, yeah. You know, and these guys, they want their, you know, if their business jet comes in, you know, if you have a uglier aircraft next to it, you say, hey, can you park my aircraft further away or not? I don't want to be near that one, you know. Guess who, right? So, right? So, you know, a lot of what he has to do is deal with personalities. He's got to deal with billionaire personalities, right? How do you make a billionaire happy? Right, now find that in your school textbook. Right? Okay, right? So I found that I started asking these questions instinctively because when we started the business, and Strand has always been a company that we multitask. Yeah, going in the forward in the future as well, business is all about multitasking. You cannot just hold one hat. Right? You need to know what's going on in accounts. If you're the boss, accounts, human resource, you need to know everything. You don't have to do everything, but you need to know, right? You need to know, and you have to be on the ground with a lot of these things as well, right? So I think with these sort of entrepreneurial skills, right, then certain instincts are built up, okay? And that's when you learn how to smell a good deal, right? So Richard Branson, for example, I think he's famously known to be a dyslexic. Do you know what dyslexic is? Yeah, he can't read properly, right? Can't read properly, but he can smell a good deal, right? But if you read his book, you know, on his life experiences, you see a lot of times where he was like, you know, he signed the deal and he'd go around the back and vomit because it's like the risk was so big, right? It just made him sick. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that is really, I think, the experience I've had to build up to today, right? So where am I today? I'm not at the end of my journey. All right, I have a company that's about 150 men strong. Okay, today the problems I have to face is attrition. Do you know what attrition is? People leaving. Yeah. So I think Bill Gates famously said at 5:30 every day, Microsoft becomes worthless. Why is that? Everybody goes home. That's right. Because without the people, there's nothing. And more businesses in the future are going to be about that. It's about the people. And business, always remember that, it's always about people, right? Whatever it is, either the people that you sell to, the people that you have in your company, the people that you work with, right? The people that you collaborate with, all about people. There's a lot of relationships that you have to build. Okay, so I'm not there yet. So I've got 160 guys now. We're serving, I think, about 20 plus clients in the world, right? We're working on a lot of different aircraft, okay? So we've got a breadth of skills. I've got problems where clients want specific skills, and I've exhausted all those skills, and the other guys have got other skills. So product not right. I've misjudged the market, right? So now I have to retrain and move people into other disciplines, okay? What my target is to get to 1,000 people by 2017, 2018. At 1,000 people, I am considered a average size engineering company, services company. Okay, what do you think is the biggest engineering services company in the world? What do you think the size is, as far as I know? Tata Consulting Services. Tata Consulting. Tata, you know Tata? What does Tata manufacture? Cars, lorries, steel, right? Tata Consulting Services is a completely separate company. It's a services company, right? How many engineers do you think in there selling man hours? Guess. Guess. One guess.
10,000.
10,000. Okay. Another guess. Next to you.
100,000.
That's right. It's upward of 100,000. Upwards of 100,000 engineers in one company. Right? That's how big an engineering services company can be. Right? It brings in about 12 plus billion US dollars a year in revenue, almost the same size as Tata. Right? So for an industry that did not exist 20 years ago plus, you know, it is now an industry as big as one manufacturing steel, right? And you think about it, the second largest company in the world, I think it still is, right? In the world after ExxonMobil is what? Apple, consumer goods company with only what? A handful of products. Yeah. So it's an evolution. I think things will change a lot, right? And so I hopefully at 1,000 guys have reached a sustainable level that's just sustaining, but the journey will not stop there. I'll have to go because who's am I competing against then? I have to figure out, right? Who is it that I'm serving? 1,000 people may not be enough for the market that I've now opened up. Yeah. If not enough, that means it opens up for another guy to come in. Yeah. Today, Airbus and Boeing have this problem. Airbus produces 42 aircraft a month. I think Boeing is at 42, 43 aircraft a month for the 737 and the A320. Those are competing products, right? The actual requirement is about 30 aircraft more per month. There's actually 30 aircraft more requirement per month. Okay? Today, if you order an A320, it will take you 8 years to get your aircraft. That's the order backlog, right? But that 30 aircraft a month means somebody else can enter the market. And that's why you find China now beginning to try and do that. The Russians are beginning to try to do that. Now, once they enter and they're able to produce a certified aircraft that everybody agrees is as good as an Airbus or a Boeing, then Airbus and Boeing got a problem, right? Because then a price war will start, right? You see? So nobody is safe. Air Asia cannot just sit there and sell you the same thing again and again. Yeah? You think low cost, yeah, great. But few prices change. Customer sentiments change, right? So your product has to evolve. So actually, this is a world of entrepreneurs. If you're working even in the company, there are some companies that are still very old school, archaic, in a sense. Those sometimes you will never see this. But in companies like Air Asia, I think everybody is treated almost like an entrepreneur. Everybody feels the pinch. You know, I think Tony Fernandez himself will go around and almost meet everybody in the company, right? Because he always goes down. You know, if you want to find Azran, right? Every time I've seen over in, I've been to the hangars. I've always seen him. He's always with the people, always sitting, having lunch, talking with them. You know, always with the people that he works with, right? So, I think the industries that you guys are going into, right? Those things are all rapidly evolving. You got to be ready for it. Yeah, you can't stop. You have to move even faster than the generation that's come before you. Because I found, you know, at my age, usually, I mean, historically, when I was younger, the CEOs that I saw were 50 plus years old. Right now, I'm seeing all the CEOs are within the age of 30 to 40. Right? Mark Zuckerberg's not even 30. Right? So these things are changing. Yeah. And you have to keep your eyes open and not just get fixed on, you know, going into a certain type of industry, I think. Because today, even first jobs, a lot of the time they give you a 2-year contract or 1-year contract. Right? Sometimes I've seen where they perpetually just give you a contract. Right? 2 years, 2 years, 1 year, 2 years, 1 year, 2 years, you know. Why? Because at any one time, if the company can afford it, cut. Yeah. So I think this is the kind of environment you're going into, you got to shed away all the thoughts about going into an industry that, okay, I will start here and then I will right? I will be there forever, and then I will finally get a, become the CEO of the company, I think those are few and far between now, because some smartass is going to go to the top, right? Because that guy is special. He can do something nobody else can do. He can open up a market that nobody else can open up, and then he's bringing in 50% of the net worth of the company. That's it, He's gone, right? So hopefully that's been useful. Yeah, I got about 15-20 minutes. I thought I'll leave about that time to have any questions from anyone in the audience.
If you don't mind, can you share with us what was your biggest failure and how did you deal with it? I mean, you start a new company, right? It should be very very hard.
I think I have not yet I've not yet had that huge failure happen yet. I've come close to it. Okay? Well, my staff are probably on this. Hello, staff. Right? So let me reveal something. I've had what you call 1 month cash flow problem. Do you know what that is? Do you know what that is? What's cash flow? So when you put in an invoice, right? Your business, right? You put in invoice. You've done the work, you put in invoice. Okay? There's terms on that invoice. 30 days, 60 days, whatever it is, right? And sometimes 60 days, they don't pay still. Okay? So cash flow is literally how much money you got in the bank. That's a real problem entrepreneurs have to deal with, That's why they say cash is king, right? Cash is king. So I've had 1 month cash flow problem a few times. So can you imagine sleeping, right? You know what I mean? And you know that if something doesn't happen in that month, you're dead, right? You have to start liquidating. Yeah. So I've come to those kind of situations, and I think so far, every entrepreneur you ask will tell you that, right? That's when you don't sleep at all, right? You wake up just thinking, how am I going to pay salaries, right, next month, right? I think every entrepreneur goes through that, and I wished that, in my company, I try and make everybody feel that, you're not bringing in money, you're not earning, you don't expect everything to come your way. Yeah, you bring in money, then you get paid. You know what I mean? But at the same time, as you bring in money, you're gaining your skills and your experience. Okay, I think that is the close calls that I've had. I think every entrepreneur has that. The other one is people leaving. People leaving to me is you take it very personally. Yeah, when people leave. So employees always think, I've got so many choices. I can tell you the boss is dying every time he hears people leave. Because to him it's like, oh my God, how much money did I put in that guy, right? Trained him up, brought him all the way here, invested in him, right? Now I made him the boss of this thing, and as soon as he became the boss of that, he said, okay, thank you very much for the experience. I'm going off somewhere else. I got to fill a huge hole, right? So far, I'm very lucky that all the top guys that I've got there are still with, only one of them actually went into the client, and so he's actually helping us, right? Yeah, so far. Yeah. But even at the second, third levels, when I lose people, it's a big problem, and you take it very personally, right? So those are the two big things. I think that's quite big, those two things, right, to face in my sort of business. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Anything else?
How do you get people to stay?
Okay. Okay, an anecdote, right? I remember once talking to a CEO of another company, and he said, Naguib, there's only two kind of people in the world, two kind of leaders in the world, right? He said, the mercenary and the martyr. Okay? I said, oh really? Okay, so what's a martyr? The guy who will die for his vision, right? He'll do everything for his vision, and people follow him to death, right? And then he said, then the mercenary is the guy who will do it all for the money, and as soon as he's got the money, he's off. Right? He said, which one are you? And I explained to him what I do, right? And he said, oh my God, he said, you're a third kind. Yeah? He said, you're a cult leader. I get people to drink the poison. Right? So I think that's been, and it's a personality thing. Each person does it very differently. Yeah? I tend to be someone who rallies people. In each person, I think you need to see an individual, right? That's been one of the biggest challenges growing a business. When you're 15, 20 people, you love every one of them, right? Every day you yamcha with them and so on and so forth. Okay? But when 160 people and 10 guys every month, right? I'll get in the lift, I'll only know that they are my employees when they press 13th floor. Okay. Somebody is in my company, right? But every time I see 13th floor, I'll turn around and say, okay, who's the probable candidate? Say, hi, right? So the challenge is to keep in touch, and I'm finding that challenging, because when you get 1,000 people, how do you keep in touch with 1,000 people? Because they got to love you, in a sense, because they need to trust you. People need to trust you that you're bringing them into a direction that they want to be, right? So I think there's, people in Malaysia is very fascinated with the word boss. My PA was calling me boss for a while when she first joined. She said, boss, hey, boss. So I started thinking about it. I said, no, I don't want her to call me boss, right? So I told her, I said, Ellie, every time you call me boss, it gives me a hard-on, right? And that's it. She didn't call me boss after that again. But I think that's important, because when you have that boss mentality, it's very difficult. It's difficult to be genuine to people, yeah, because they always say, oh, you boss, And the other problem with people calling you boss is that means it's your responsibility, right? Everything is on you. You're not a colleague, and you have to be a colleague. Today's business, everybody, your generation particularly, I don't know, if they still Gen Y?
Yes.
They're still Gen Y? Okay. Yeah. So your generation particularly needs to be appreciated, So his generation didn't give a shit, I mean, it's like, you don't turn to work, don't turn up to work, don't turn up tomorrow, I mean. Okay, so yeah, I think, and that evolves. I think when you start running businesses, you may find that you have to accept a very high level of attrition. Somebody told me that Google's attrition level is more than 50%. Google, and you think it's the best company to work for. Apparently people come in, go out, Google all the time, So I think that's something you have to think about. That's what it is today for me, and I think generally it's true, right? Next question. Yep.
So as you mentioned, there was one guy from Japanese who was in the same field as you.
Yes.
So what happened to the guy?
He set up, he's as big as I am, because we both are co-leaders in this program. So we started growing. So he's about 100, I think 150 as well now, engineers. That's interesting, because he came from Japan, right? I run my company like a European company, So we're very much about, equal, everybody talks, and boss make coffee for the employee, we're like that, right? His company is Japanese. Japanese is all, right? Yeah, so you see, you go to his office, right? All the slippers lined up outside, all the shoes lined up outside, nobody wears shoe inside, And when they see the boss, they all like, and he got a Malay guy, He's a Malay guy. And most of the employees are Malays, right? So they all behave like Japanese. Yeah, they all behave like Japanese. It is strange, but that's the mentality that he's adopted. Unfortunately, we don't have a Malaysian engineering culture. We don't have that yet. Not to a high level. I think we're good tinkerers. Yeah, we got a lot of people who can build stuff, right? But you see, all those factories. You go to Balakong, you see all those factories, right? They produce everything. I remember once going to one of these factories. The guy, he was a real inspiration to me. He was a bak kut teh. He owned a bak kut teh stall when he was 18 years old. One stall, right? Because his name was Gordon, right? I went to see him, and today Gordon, I think, owns something like 20 factories in the world, right? So Gordon's a multi-millionaire, but he just drives in this old Mini Cooper, into his office, and Gordon just has a passion for building stuff. So he showed me the first machine that he ever built, which makes gas hobs for cookers, right? So the hob, and then you have to drill the hole. So he put 3 drills together, put a harness around them, and then like that, right? And he made that like 30 years ago. He said, Naguib, I'm at 30 years ago, still making money for me today, right? But then he asked me, he said, but I want to do aerospace. I've done everything else, money not a problem already, right? He's got, he's multi-millionaire, right? So money not a problem. I want to do aerospace. But the thing is, his shop floor was full of migrant workers. Yeah? So to produce stuff, everybody can produce stuff. That produce well-engineered stuff which is of a certain standard, right? Particularly when it comes to aerospace. That's something in Malaysia only a few companies are certified to do, and certainly in the culture is not there yet. We are not naturally aerospace standard people, because aerospace standard people are very meticulous, communicate very, very straight. One thing about aerospace people, they're very straight, because our margins for error. You guys do 3D design? Yeah? I was at an architecture company. Have you dealt with architecture people before? Right? Today with 3D design, right? For aircraft, they don't just design the shape of the aircraft, but every pipe, everything is inside. They call the digital mock-up, the DMU. It's literally a digital version of the aircraft with all the design information, the materials, everything in there. Right? They're even using it now into the manufacturing and in service. That model, instead of paper, you now have a 3D model that you refer to on an iPad. Right? It's gone so advanced, right? In the building and infrastructure environment, I was at this architecture firm in the UK. It's one of the leading companies using this technology. They're literally only just learning how to draw in 3D, and they're so fascinated by it. Yeah. So it's quite a different thing, So industry today, you talk about aerospace, it's very much apex industry, and that is the problem in Malaysia. The engineering culture is not yet here, so we have to adopt Japanese culture, European culture, and hopefully at some point we will start developing our own culture of excellence in this kind of industries. Yeah, I think that's important. You have to realize that. I think generally Malaysians are not that level yet. You can be very fast. That's one thing I found. Once you guys understand what it is that's expected, the problem is we're very cincai in Malaysia. Yeah, that's our problem.
All these people.
No? Sure? Okay. You guys are weird. Yeah, so I think it's about structure and about process. So I won't rubbish you. So good job. Okay, maybe last question, last 5 minutes. Oh, here you go.
Hello, thank
Yes.
you for the speech. Today I wanted to ask, why Airbus? Why not Boeing? Why specifically you choose?
Oh, okay. No, that's a good question. And that's to do with leveraging on your core, right? So I came from the European industry, right? And one of the biggest landmark things I did in Malaysia was I was able to bring in contracts which never were brought into Malaysia before. Okay? And I did that because I have a relationship with Airbus. The people in Airbus knew me. When I opened my company, I need to get certified. Usually it takes you years to get the certification. I did it within 6 months, right? So, and that's because the guy auditing in Airbus knew who I was. So they came down, they said, okay, everything the same, okay, here's your cert, done, So I've done it in record time. And because of that, I've had all these relationships in Airbus, I kept leveraging on it, okay? So the first thing was that I needed to grow a foundation, okay? Only this year and last year we started with Boeing, right? And that one, we are actually selling our Airbus credentials. I did a tour of all the Boeing factories, centers hosted by Boeing, December last year. And I showed that slide, with all the Airbus just to piss them off, right? So I said, oh look, all the Airbus aircraft. I said, where the hell is your Boeing aircraft? You're going to fix that, right? So give me some work, right? So hopefully the next year or so we'll start Boeing, but based on very solid credentials with Airbus. So you must always treat your clients well, you know, and you must know that sometimes certain clients are very important to you. You must take care of them. Yeah, don't suddenly a new client comes along and say, oh, okay, you know, this guy doesn't pay enough anymore, right? Yeah. So yeah, I think that's really why, not Boeing yet, but Boeing about to start, and why we took since 2006 to now mainly doing Airbus work.
Are you considering Embraer?
Embraer, yes. The challenge with Embraer is that their aircraft programs right now, they're quite diversified in terms of where they outsource, but they're already in a lower cost region, right? So this is the thing. Sometimes to instigate a new client, you always have to have something that starts the ball rolling. We haven't found that thing yet with Embraer, right? So right now, when you say cost, I don't think we're cost competitive so much with Brazil. You're almost the same cost. So you need to be giving them something else, right? So as a salesman, so now I become a salesman as well, I've always got to try and sell different things to them and see how they react, right? And then I also got to try and figure out by doing research to try and see what may work. So I've been knocking on that door, and I find that probably the only door that will work is when they sell an aircraft to the Malaysian government. When they sell an aircraft to the Malaysian government, then I have to work with the government to say, okay, Embraer, now you have to give us some work because we gave you a purchase, right? Yeah. Okay.
Great. So please join me again to thank Naguib for a very inspiring talk. Thank you.